So there's always lots of questions about CO2 and high pressure air. And what's the difference? And why would I want to do one or the other? Well, I'm going to try and go over some of just the basics, tell you about these different air systems, and so you have a little bit better understanding. So this is a CO2 tank. This is typically what people, have when they're first getting their first paintball gun, and what a lot of people see, and they're really easy to get. One of the good things about these is they're really, really cheap, with usually a 20-ounce tank, which is a pretty big size tank, usually running you about $25 to $30. Depends upon where you live, how much they go for, but that can hold a lot of CO2, and you can get a lot of shots with it. And you can go down in size, and as you go down in size, you get a little bit cheaper. Now the sizes typically are 3.5 ounce, 7 ounce, 9 ounce, 10 ounce, 12 ounce, 14 ounce, 16 ounce, and 20 ounce. And you probably might even find some 32 ounce. The reason they go with ounces is because these tanks run off of the internal volume. That means that when they get filled up, they're actually getting filled up with liquid CO2. And it's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like this tank right here can hold up to a maximum of 9 ounces of liquid CO2. Typically, places that do fill up CO2 tanks do not fill them up all the way. They fill them up about 2/3, or if it's colder weather, they may fill it up a little bit more than that, to about 3/4 of the way completely full. Reason being because the CO2, as it gets filled in here, is a liquid, but then it converts back to a gas so that it can shoot your paintball gun. And so that's why they run off the volume. They don't fill it all the way because of that. So this is really what CO2 tanks, what it is. They all have a burst disc, which is a 3,000 psi. What this means is typically the pressure, the operating pressure of the CO2 coming out to your paintball gun is going to be about 850 psi. That's pounds per square inch. That means the pressure that it's putting out there is 850 pounds per square inch. If you have square inch material right there, the air was coming out, it's pushing on it that hard. As it warms up, you go out and you go play on a nice warm day, the pressure can actually increase. And what it's doing is it's converting more of this liquid that's in here to a gas, which is under a higher pressure. Well, if you get too high of a pressure, it can be real dangerous. Sometimes some people will notice when they go play paintball, if they let their gun sit out between every game and it's warm out, that their first shots, when they start the game, will go a little bit further, but then later on they won't go as far. It's because it's cooled down a little bit and it's back down to a normal 850 psi. Otherwise, it can easily hit 1,200 psi, 1,800 psi, 2,000 psi. But when this actually gets to 3,000 psi, this right here is called burst disc. And basically, there's a small little, it's like a plug, and there are 2 holes on it. This should show you. Hopefully the light will get in there. You can see there's a hole that goes all the way through. Okay? There's a small, down below here, there's a small little disc. And when the pressure gets too high, it'll actually push against that disc. It's a certain amount of, it's only so thick, so when the pressure gets too high, it causes it to rupture, to break open, and all your air will go out. This is a safety precaution. Sometimes you notice people will have their paintball guns sitting out on a nice sunny day, and then bang, and psh, and all the air's coming out. That's what it is. It's just the air from the safety is coming out. Okay? It's nothing too scary, but it just requires this to be replaced, and then it can get refilled, and you're good to go. Alright? Now, this is your typical high-pressure air tank. This is actually an older model, Pure Energy tank. Pure Energy was one of the bigger names throughout the early part of this decade and century and stuff. They made a lot of these tanks. This is a 68-45 tank. There's 2 numbers there, 68 and 45. 68 is cubic inches. Again, this is volume. This is the internal volume. 68, it can hold up to 68 cubic inches of air. Unlike a CO2 tank where we're filling it with liquid, compressed air is exactly that. It's air. It's the air you and I breathe. They have compressors. The compressors suck in the air that we would normally be breathing and compress it down. On a good system, they'll actually have filters and other stuff so that they keep dirt and they keep water from getting in there and causing any problems with these. But when it gets filled up 68 cubic inches. Then it's again PSI. Remember I told you PSI is pounds per square inch. The output pressure typically on these is going to be 850 PSI. Well, these will hold up to, this one will hold up to 4,500 pounds per square inch of air. There's other ones that are 3,000 pounds per square inch of air. What it's doing is this, your tank. Your tank itself is holding that much pressure. On the top is a regulator. This is a regulator. This drops down the pressure. Whatever the pressure is in the tank, it will drop it down to whatever the pressure is set for this. Typically, 850 PSI. The same as these tanks right here is a CO2 tank. The output's going to be the same. There are a couple of other differences, but typically this is what you're getting. You're getting tanks that are outputting the same amount of pressure as a CO2 tank. They just happen to hold all this higher pressure of air. Now, why is this important? Well, let me show you a couple of things here. So I have some other tanks I'll show you. Although this doesn't look all that great, it's got the stickers kind of coming off of it. You'll see there's no regulator on here. This is the 48 cubic inch, 48 cubic inch, 3,000 PSI, typically called a Steely tank. Okay, these are heavy. This is easily heavier than a typical 20-ounce CO2 tank, which is about the exact same size as this tank. Then you add into it the regulator, that adds a little bit more weight to it, and then you get it filled up, and boom. So these are really heavy, but they're really cheap to get. Typically you can get these for $40 to $50, brand new from a store, or people are selling them, they're just trying to get rid of them because they've moved on to something else. The funny part about it is hydro testing on them. Typically it'll cost as much money to hydro test this, which I'll get to in a moment, as it would to just go buy a whole new tank. Okay? And that's going to be the first part of this. I guess I'm going to do a second part here, and I'm going to show you a few more high pressure tanks and talk about a few more things with them.